gonna sneeze. It's coming. As soon as you call attention to a sneeze, it goes away. It's gone. It's gone. So, today, let's talk about courage. Courage, I believe, is the mother of all virtues, because pretty much virtues are irrelevant if you don't have the courage to practice them. So, the way that I feel is if you were to develop any characteristic, any virtue inside yourself, put special attention into developing something, courage makes the most sense. Because if you think about any other virtue like strength or honor or integrity or I don't know, like creativity or any other virtue, being able to have courage to practice them is the key. Because you can have integrity internally, you can have a sense of justice, what's fair, what's right, but if you don't have a courage to speak up about it, then what does it matter? What difference does it make that you feel something is wrong if you don't actually, verbalize that something's wrong or take action to correct those wrongs or to act in the sake of justice? A really simple example would be something like self-discipline. Okay, so self-discipline is a virtue. How does courage play into that? Well, if you want to be disciplined about something like exercising every day or drinking enough water or whatever, or not eating sweets or whatever way that you choose to exercise your self-discipline muscle, you need some amount of courage to get through the rough patch of that. It takes I know this is on a kind of microscopic level, but it takes some amount of courage to say, no, I'm not going to have that dessert. I'm going to pass. I'm going to take a pass on that today. You need to be able to have some kind of the ability to stand up for what you believe in, whether you believe that you shouldn't be eating dessert all the time, you shouldn't have that piece of cake, or whether you feel that someone is being mistreated and there's an injustice occurring. It doesn't matter the scale, but you need enough internal strength, which is which comes from some courage to be able to face those difficult things, however small, however large. So since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with the value of courage without thinking about it in those terms. I just think about the kinds of stories that I was really obsessed with. It was always saving the world and hero themes and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, being a brave woman and all of those things. It's like everything that I could think of, my favorite content involved some kind of hero, some kind of person who stood up against all odds, usually some type of underdog character. So let's use Buffy as an example, because that's a series that I've watched way too many times. Same goes for Angel. I'm actually a huge Joss Whedon fan, but I feel like that's a whole other video. But Buffy's just this small little 5 foot tall girl who's just she just wants to be a regular girl, but she's endowed with these superpowers, this calling to rid the world of evil. And she practices courage again and again in a variety of different ways, whether it's sacrificing herself to save loved ones, or sacrificing her desire to do normal things like go to college, in the effort of ridding the world from evil, of fulfilling her calling. That whole show is about courage in one way or another. And I'm sure that was one reason that I was obsessed with that show. I love superheroes, but I especially love superheroes who are relatable. So to me, when I was a teenager, I was able to see, okay, this is some kind of female role model, someone that I can look up to. But I was not myself a particularly courageous person. In fact, I spent years of my life being mildly hindered by anxiety and fear of all kinds of things. I still have lots of fears. It's not like I've conquered my fear. And I don't believe that courage involves overcoming your fear and not having them. It's simply being able to overcome your inner resistance to do something that feels more meaningful. It's almost always more meaningful to overcome that resistance than to sit back and take the easy road. Courage is a way of deliberately choosing not the easy road, but something that the easy road is almost never the road that has significant value. I mean, when I would stay at home because I was afraid to, go out or do things or spend time with my friends or be in social situations back when I was in the thick of feeling anxious. Was it worthwhile? Like, was it a better choice to take the easy way to stay home? It probably wasn't. I probably would have had more life experiences, more memories, things like that actually contributed to the story of my life. Now, one thing I like to think about is how my life can be viewed through the lens of story. And if I think about my favorite stories, which involve like superheroes and people practicing courage, then of course it would make sense to me to make my own story rich and interesting and to feel as though I'm fulfilling whatever destiny that I might have. It makes sense that practicing courage is like absolutely essential to that, because you're not going to have that interesting of a story if you're not practicing courage on a small level or a large level. Overcoming obstacles, helping the little guy, things like that. Those are the kinds of things that taking the risk, taking the jump, doing the crazy things sometimes. There's been situations, I feel like, ever since probably the last couple years, I've really started to step up my courage game. And in one sense, starting an online business has been a really great practice playground for this, because I do things that are out of my comfort zone all the time in my piano TV business. I mean, making these videos is out of my comfort zone. I feel like simply saying these words to you is an act of courage, because I'm opening up, I'm sharing my thoughts, and that leaves me vulnerable to criticism. And I mean, like, getting over the experience of criticism hurting me, I mean, that's a like whole other thing. But anytime you open up, I feel like one of the greatest acts of courage is simply to open up, because the tendency is to protect yourself and not be vulnerable and not share what you feel and what you think and your ideas and all of those things, because if you open up, then you could be hurt. So it's one of the biggest acts of courage for me is just keeping my heart open. And that's something that I talked a little bit about yesterday as well. But the way that I practice courage in my business, for example, I do things all the time that feel uncomfortable to me. So every time I launch a course, you guys have no idea, like, the amount of inner fear that I feel. And I'm just like, I have to do it. Like, I just have to do it. I have to create this course. I have to get this content out to people. I have to do what I can to help people learn piano effectively. But there's so many fear points in doing that. It's, what if people don't like the course? What if people think that everything I do should be free? And like, for me, charging money for creating a course, what if people get mad at me for doing that? Or if I do a webinar, what if I fail? What if I'm doing like a live thing and I just fall like flat and I just do a poor job and people think that I'm dumb or whatever? There's so many, or what if I get the tech wrong? I remember when I launched my very first piano TV course. It was 30 days of piano, and I thought I had everything set up. I triple checked all of my systems, but there was some weird tech issue. I can't even remember what it was, but I distinctly remember that week when people were signing up, I did virtually nothing but field tech support because something had gone wrong in the way I configured it. It took me a while to figure it out. I was basically doing it on my own. And I was doing it with a baby sleeping on my chest because I had like a 4 or 5 month old or something like that at that time. So she would have these naps, and she used to like nap with me. She was not a good napper when she was a little baby. So she'd be like sleeping on me, and I'd be on my phone answering tech support emails. So yeah, I mean, there's a fear that what if things go wrong? What if there's a technical issue? I've definitely had that before. Or what if no one wants this? What if I release a product or release a course or a webinar or anything? What if people don't show up? What if people don't do it? So there's been so much practice pretty much since I started doing piano TV videos back in 2015, where I've had to consistently push up against my inner resistance, my fear. There was this desire to like, oh, don't do that, that's scary. Like, let's just like hide behind the computer and not put myself out there more. But I had to keep pushing against that. And it's almost like a muscle. It was like the more I did that, the easier it became and the less resistance I would feel. But believe me, I still feel lots of resistance when I release anything into the world. In fact, I'm working on like a beginner course right now, and I'm going to start doing some group lessons. And I'm going through all of the things where it's like, okay, well, I've never done group lessons on the internet before. What if only 2 people want to do them? Then what kind of group is that? Or what if like 50 people want to do them? And then how do I manage that logistically? What if people get partway through the course and then they get really confused because the way that I've taught the material isn't clear? There's like, even now that I've been doing this a long time, there's still so many areas that I freeze up, I get fearful. I'm doing a webinar tomorrow for Piano TV, and every time I plan on it, I'm like, okay, I think this is good. I think the content is good with this webinar. I think I've structured this in a way, but what if I just like have massive brain freeze, or a bullet point that I thought I would remember an example for? Like if I have tell a story about blank, what if I forget that story? And then I'm just like, this pretty much never happens, but it's still just, there are so many courage points in daily life. And there's also, like, not on a business level. It's easy to talk about business level stuff because it's not really that personal. But on a personal level, there's been a variety of things that I've been practicing courage with as well. But what that ends up creating is, I feel like my life in the last, let's say, 3 years is a lot more memorable and interesting. I think one of the things that I fear, and I don't know if this is correct, and maybe there's a better way to live my life, but the way I feel right now is, if my life was a story, I don't want any point in my life to say in the pages, and then 5 years passed or something. I don't want some block of my life to disappear with like just a short sentence, because nothing really happened. I didn't really do anything. I just kind of kept maintaining the status quo. I wasn't pushing myself. Nothing exciting happened. It's not that I need some kind of roller coaster thrill-seeking life. I am not a thrill seeker. That is not my modus operandi. But if I am practicing courage and pushing myself out of my comfort zone continually, then it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to have more interesting experiences than if I weren't to do that at all. So in order to practice virtually any virtue, even a virtue like creativity requires some degree of courage, because it's inner courage. If you want to be creative, there's some amount of plunging the depths of your soul, which I've talked about on this channel, that's involved in the process. You have to you have to dig, and digging takes courage, because when you go inside of yourself and you try to pull something up, something that could be created as art, you might come up with some nice things, but you're going to come up with a lot of like awful things or big messes or tangles. And to be able to face those things, to face like the less savory aspects of yourself, takes courage. So basically, when I'm thinking about if there were one virtue above all else to develop, I think it's courage. And then everything else follows from there. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. So I feel like we meandered a little bit, but hopefully it just gives you something to think about. Maybe you disagree with me, or maybe you've had experiences like this in your own life where by practicing courage you've ended up with more interesting experiences, or maybe you've had like the opposite, because I mean, practicing courage is a form of risk taking, and not every risk is going to end with a reward. It's not going to always end with a positive outcome. I mean, that's why it's a risk. There's always a chance of something going wrong as well. And in fact, sometimes it's that old idea that the greater the risk, the greater the reward, or something like that. So the higher the chance that something is going to fail almost makes it on some level like a better gamble and a more interesting story, regardless of if you succeed or fail. So even if everyone, like even if Piano TV had gone nowhere or things, I would still be glad that I put myself out there and I created YouTube videos. Even if no more than 50 people ever watch these videos, then I still feel like I got something valuable out of it by practicing courage, by opening up and sharing what I'm thinking, practicing spontaneity, practicing talking off the cuff and putting aside my nervousness and everything to just be real and try to like find a realness when I'm communicating to you through this camera. So practicing courage, even if it fails. I can't think of an instance where it hasn't felt worthwhile. So anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'll catch you guys later.